It's funny though. If you look back, there was a stretch there from probably 91, 92 maybe to 94 or 5 that Jordans weren't the best basketball shoes. And that's what kind of turned me off for a little while there. Like I said, the Huaraches, the obviously the Webbers, the Barclays, the Force system.
There was a lot of big dogs around that time, and Nike they were looking to make a lot more money. I mean, they were making a lot of money anyway, but they were like, we got a lot of guys out here, and like that was during an era of I mean, it's pretty thick at that point in time of all those players who had very decent shoes that were competing with Jordans.
There were. I mean, and I think Jordan fell behind because they focused so much on aesthetics. I don't think that they were looking at the function of the shoe so much because I don't think anybody can really argue 8s were distinctive in look. Yes. And then 9s, 10s, and to an extent, without the patent leather, 11s are very basic looking shoes.
You're right.
If you take the patent leather off, the 11s are very basic looking shoes. But if you look at the other shoes of that time, pretty distinctive. Shaq's Reeboks, Shawn Kemp's Reeboks. You look at people went crazy around here about the Grant Hill Fila's. Went nuts.
That's true.
They were bricks on my feet too. I couldn't stand them.
All Reeboks were heavy.
Pennies exploded. Pennies were huge. I knew so many guys that played in pennies. I knew a lot of guys that played in Griffeys. I couldn't do it, but I know a lot of guys that did.
I did notice that, and that was a shoe I loved. I wasn't able to get some of the earlier versions, which I still don't even have the earlier version. Like I said, I mean, even Braylon's had a pair. Those first couple versions, people, they stayed in those shoes. And like you said, I think they were playing basketball in them. Even though I can't see how you can play basketball in a shoe that has a strap that runs like a football player shoe, like kind of like Deion's and Bo Jackson's. Like, I mean, that's what the Griffey had that strap around the top.
It did.
So it's wrapping around your ankle. I mean, I'm not saying that there weren't basketball shoes that had straps, but not like those. Those are more, what do you want to call them? Training, turf shoes.
Absolutely.
Shoes, baseball, whatever.
And they came up high, and they tightened in weird areas. The forefoot was built for someone who runs in really short bursts, not someone that runs up and down the court. They were different kinds of shoes. I could never play in them. I had the Griffey 4s, and I hated them. I thought I was going to love them. They were terrible. I was always more of a Nike Flight guy, and then I went over once the Webbers came out. I went to the Air Max, and I never really looked back. I thought probably the Weber line all the way up through maybe the Tim Duncans. I thought they were the best basketball shoes made for at least that stretch.
Even the Garnett were good. The Nike
Some
Garnett.
people might say that all the way back to the Fab 5 shoes, those Air Force Max that came out. Remember that? Yes. I think some people would say that the Barclays and the Air Force Max, the super like 10-foot high David Robinsons with the pump on them, all those shoes, the Alonzo Mournings that came up to your freaking neck. I think a lot of people would say that they were making the best shoes for a good 5 to 8 year stretch there. But I thought Jordan fell off in those years, and then the 12s came out, and I'd never seen anything like it. Best basketball.
They basically took it back over, with that shoe. I think they sat there and thought about it for a while. Like, we got to get a shoe that's going to get him back in the forefront. Granted, they're all under the same umbrella, but like, no, the Jordan is the shoe that's supposed to be at the top and in the forefront. It lost its steam. Granted, it was because I could imagine back then during that time, those shoes probably didn't sell. Like, they do now because they're retros, but I guarantee those shoes probably were, like you said, at the bottom of the list. I mean, in the top tier echelon of the top players, it was probably selling at the bottom. With the 9s and the 8s and stuff like that.
They were going on clearance. So that's a weird thing for Jordans. I think you would if you paid close attention, you'd see though that when they took back over, like you just mentioned, is when they relaunched it as Jordan Brand.
Oh, okay.
That was that 12-13 era when it became that. It had nothing to do with Nike. They tried to make it its own brand. They started pushing out clothes in that 12-13. They would have those neon holograms on the clothes and stuff like that. Did. And then for sure they launched Jordan Brand for what around the 14? Does that sound right? It was either 13 or 14 when Jordan Brand became its own.
Oh, when they started actually like getting players.
Yeah. They made it separate. They made it separate because I think the Jumpman Pro ones or the Jumpman Team ones, they weren't Jumpman Pro. Jumpman Pro was Eddie Jones and those guys. Yeah. But Jumpman Team was probably the tail end of the Fab Five, right? 93, 94.
Yeah.
And then they broke off and made it kind of their own brand.